Appeals to order. If everyone please stand, join me in saying the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Before we get underway, there's a few administrative matters to take care of. First, draw your attention to the fire exit located to your left. In the event of a fire, you will be notified by an announcement. If notified, please move in a calm and orderly fashion to the exit. Do not use the elevator. Use either the north or the south stairs to leave the building. Our meetings are being recorded by our secretary, Michelle, for the purpose of a record and minutes. So each time you come to the microphone, if you would identify yourself by your name and your address and speak clearly into the microphone so she can get that down accurately. We follow the items on the order in which they are listed in the agenda, extra copies of which are available on the table by the door. Once the case has been called, the applicant or their representative will come to the podium, identify themselves, state their address, then raise their right hand, be sworn, and then present their case. During the presentation of the case, the members of the board have an opportunity to question or engage in discussion with the applicant concerning aspects of the application. And once that process has been concluded, then the case is open for public input. There are so far identified three categories of public input. The first, we ask to hear from those who are in favor of the application. If there's more than one of you, if you would line up along the wall by the door and then come right up when the first person's done speaking. After we've heard everybody who speaks in favor of the application, then we open it to those who are opposed to the application and follow the same procedure. Once we've heard from those who are opposed to the application, we open it up for the category that was developed about 2 or 3 years ago with somebody who wants to talk about the application or the topic of the application, but they're not either in favor or opposed to the, and have no particular opinion about the application in front of us. They just want to talk about it. Once that category has been completed, we'll offer the applicant or their representative the opportunity to address any issues or concerns that arose during the public input portion of the hearing. And at that point, once that's concluded, then the case will be concluded and we'll move on to the next case. After all the cases have been heard, the board will take a short recess and we'll announce how long that'll be at the beginning of it, and then we'll come back to deliberate the cases that are on the agenda. Unlike consideration of the cases, deliberation of the cases depends upon your position on the agenda and your actual physical presence. So if the first applicant leaves, we would take the second case first, and we would take them in the order in which they appear on the agenda and for which applicants or petitioners are still present. After we've completed those, we go back to the top and take the cases for which the applicants have already left. And if you're interested, there's no further input during the deliberation portion of the meeting. You're welcome to stay and listen. If the board has a question and the applicant's still here, that's allowed. But if you wish to leave and you are interested in knowing the results, you can either run home and turn it on TV, or you can call the Planning and Zoning Department tomorrow morning after 9 a.m. And they'll be glad to tell you what the decision was. So, having covered that, we can now address the cases on the agenda.
ZB 1701-1, upon the matter of request by Christopher Moyo for an area variance to park a commercial-type truck on a corner lot on premises 55 Lucas Drive, also known as 649 Hellendale Road, in an R1 residential district.
Good evening. I'm Christopher Moyo. This is my wife, Dana Moyo, and we live at 649 Hellendale Road, also known as 55 Lucas Drive.
Okay, if you could raise your right hands. You swear or affirm that everything you say tonight will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
I do.
What you do.
Okay.
I do.
Would you pull the mic up a little closer to your... Yeah, thanks.
We're here tonight to ask for a area variance to park our 10-foot box truck in the driveway. I own a small business specializing in fire restoration and home remodeling called Evergreen Restoration and Remodeling. And I have a few pictures here of the vehicle in the driveway, along with a letter from a letter that's signed by 14 neighbors stating that they don't mind me parking my truck in my driveway.
All right. Can you give that to Mr. Evans so he can circulate
Yes.
that among the board members? And can you tell us the reason that you're wanting to park the vehicle in the driveway like that? I think in your application you mentioned that your business is located in your home,
Yes.
and do you have a home occupation permit for that?
No, we don't. We don't operate the business out of the home. We do all of the work off-site on the job sites, but we just use our home office for administrative purposes and emails and stuff like that.
You still need, like my office is in my house, but I still need a home occupation permit.
Okay, we didn't know we needed that.
It's not difficult to obtain,
Okay,
just makes it so that the town's aware that that's what you're doing.
okay.
So the business is there, but the work is done off-site.
Yes.
Materials are kept in the truck.
Yes.
Correct.
Tools.
How long you had the truck there?
Since April of 2015.
And then how long, because I saw pictures of it at one point, it wasn't lettered up.
It
was
wasn't
just-
marked, I think, I don't remember. We got it wrapped over the summer.
September we got it wrapped.
Did anybody complain? Any of the neighbors complain about
No.
it?
No. We've
And
actually gotten a positive response from all of the neighbors. They're happy that, a small business has come into the area and we're just trying to grow and get started.
The letter that you've passed around indicates that we have no objection to the vehicle being allowed to continue to park in the driveway of the property. It's signed by Matt Buck of 635 Hellendale Road, Martha Gray of 70 Lucrest Drive, perhaps Maurice Gray of 70 Lucrest Drive, Aaron Resch of 61 Lucrest Drive, Todd Palmisano, 711 Hellendale Road, Susan Giravolo, 670 Hellendale Road, Joe Rivellino, 716 Hellendale Road, Josie Vega, 701 Hellendale Road, Terra Novas at 691 Hellendale Road, Dorothy By at 648 Hellendale Road, Angeline Mastronato, 34 Lucrest Drive, John Bailing, 660 Hellendale Drive, Dawn McEwen, 660 Hellendale Drive, and Maureen Chiavetta, 680 Hellendale Drive. Are these all your immediate neighbors?
Yes.
My question, I guess, would be for Donna. It is allowed, the variance for the size of the truck, isn't it allowed if the truck was a normal van, that it would be okay to park in the driveway, but because it's a box van, there's a difference because of the height and maybe the length, but I can't imagine that.
Well, under the code, under restrictions, it just says that step vans are not allowed, period. They don't even say the size, just not allowed. That's what a box truck would be, you step up. And there's no, on it's number 8, there's nothing that says if it's a certain size, it'd be okay. It just says no step trucks or box trucks.
I only ask that because I know in the past we've had issues with boom trucks and that, and it was always based on the length and the height. And again, I know this particular style of truck. Length would, I don't believe length would be an issue. The only thing that might be an issue is height. And if it was, it's gotta be minimal.
Is this a step van?
It's a cube van, technically. It's not a, step van is more like a UPS truck.
That's what I thought.
This is classified as a cube van, but I don't know, the town might consider it a step van, I don't know, but
Is that- I was looking at this complaint action summary, and I noticed that Greg doesn't make any reference in there to a step van or any of that. He talks about the dump trucks, construction equipment, tow trucks, but he didn't use that term step van. That's why I was wondering if it
The,
is.
in the I think the code enforcement action actually is, the language that's typically in there is actually an excerpt from the code. And so they're just pulling it in and making a determination. The code enforcement officer would have made a determination that this truck qualified either based on its size, or exceeded the limits of the code based on size or the description. And so sometimes the code, because it names some types of trucks but not all, there's sometimes this board has a difficulty trying to figure out where in the mix the particular truck falls, and if it is excluded or if it's just not covered one way or the other. And that's a little bit of the challenge.
I think too, over here, we have had a number of requests for this type of thing. And we've granted some and we've denied some. So it's not a given. And it really, I mean, the size matters and that type of thing, but I think almost more importantly is how the neighbors feel. And that, to me, is the most important thing, because somebody comes home every day and that's where they live, and I don't want to see what they have to look at, you know. So some of these big boom trucks look awful out there. Yours looks much better. Good picture, by the way.
Thank
but
you.
It definitely looks much better. I personally would probably have no problem living next door to that. And I would have signed your letter also. But that, to me, is the most important thing. So I can't speak for the board. I think you'll be successful tonight, but I don't know for sure. It looks fine. And I think another important factor is that you're working for you, whereas in other cases, the person wants to park the company truck, and they don't work for themselves, and they're just trying to make it easier on the company. They don't have to go somewhere and pick up the truck. So to me, these are all determining factors in this type of case.
I'm also looking at the section of the code that was attached to the packet that talks about commercial vehicles, and I'm looking if it's not, and I don't really think it is a step van or a freight van, so if it's not one of those things that's specifically listed, like a bus and dump trucks and things like that, then there's the catch-all under number 10 that says all other vehicles exceeding any two of the following dimensions. And in going to your letter, you indicate that the first one is overall body height of 90 inches, and you indicate that's 7.5 feet, and you indicate that this is 8 feet 8 inches tall, so it exceeds that one. Then it says overall body length of 240 inches, 20 feet, and it's 19 feet. And then it's body width of 8 feet, and you indicate that the width is 6 feet 8 feet. So under 10, it would seem to me that this would not be excluded because you're only violating, or one, the dimension. It's a little higher than what is normally told. I'm also, and it is owned by you, right, the vehicle?
Yes.
Because that's another issue that's
Yep.
come up in the past. Okay.
Mr. Chairman, with that, I was trying to find it in the book also. I think his van would be classified as a freight van, a truck. That's basically what it is from when I drove by and looked at it. I didn't stop and talk to you. But on section F of 104, on the packet attached, 104-1, wouldn't this be classified as a construction vehicle since you're doing reconstruction? and equipment while actively and necessarily employed in construction or other real property improvements. So,
I think that's reference to if he was to take his truck doing work at my house, he could leave his truck in my driveway.
okay,
I think that's what that's referring to, as opposed to that it can be located at your
going back and
business.
forth. Thanks for that clarification.
But I do think that the sizes are important, the dimensions in number 10, because I'm not, maybe it's a freight van or a truck. You know, it's,
If you look at section number 10
yeah,
on that, and you go through the parameters of the sizes of a typical construction truck or a truck that is not allowed, the only criteria that it is, as far as a variance, is the height. The height is a 104 on the truck, and you're allowed 90. You know, again, in my opinion, that's minimal, but the drawback is, for me, is the signs. You know, if it was a solid white van, it was inconspicuous. As a matter of fact, if you Google his address, it shows the van parked in your driveway all solid white, and it looks very inconspicuous. Obviously, now that you put the lettering on it, it shows up. Well, in that, again, in my opinion, along with the chairman, I think, is saying something similar, but I'm not going to put words in your mouth. If it, or Mr. Thomas mentioned this, the lettering, if it were objected by the neighbors, it could be an issue. You know, in other words, the truck itself's not that big, but the lettering, if it was offensive to the neighbors, and again, I always go back to if it was in my next door, would it bother me? I don't know that one would, because it's not that big of a billboard, but it is, if it did bother some people, that would be the drawback. And if there's anybody here tonight that's complaining about that could be an issue, but, you know, again, when it was all white, it was very inconspicuous, and it really wasn't really offensive, and it really, although the code does say, section, or E, number 7, it's technically a freight van, and that it is, but it is not a large freight van. A 10-footer is the smallest freight van you can buy. A 10-foot box. Anyway.
when you back this into the driveway, does it have one of those noise makers?
No.
Okay. Any other questions or comments from the board?
Yeah, when I did do the two locations were pretty close, I spoke to a Jonathan Millis, 105 Viewcrest, and I asked him, what about this other van with 2 cases in your neighborhood? He indicated that he would not like the van parked there, but that's the only objection I got from the 3 people I spoke to that night.
And he lived down the side street?
Down Viewcrest comes at a T to Hellendale.
Any other questions or comments from the board? Does the applicant have anything you wish to add?
I mean, I think I stopped by about 16 or 17 houses, and everybody was in favor of me parking in the driveway, and the other few just weren't home. So
Okay.
that was all my close immediate neighbors, and I figured I wouldn't keep going.
I have one question. On the side of your house, you have a space where if you just took the van on the side, would you object to parking on the side, or do you use the van signage as promotion for your business?
Oh, it's just kind of nice and convenient, backing it right up to my garage, and
And we also thought that we weren't able to park it on the lawn on the side of the house.
I mean, if you put gravel down on the side,
Oh.
just to stand out next to your car, then it could be pulled back out of view. part, is the signage part of your business?
We
And
don't
as for
use it
promoting
as
business.
promotion.
I'd
Really
much
just
rather-
using it for parking.
So the alternative is B, just to put a little parking spot, get rid of a little bit of grass, and park it next to your
We
garage.
do have a garden.
We have a garden in that
garden.
area, and that's really our only yard space, because we are on a corner lot, so there's really no space beside that area for us to use.
Okay.
So that's really our only semi-private yard space. It's also the only vehicle that Chris owns, so he does use it for business and personal, so he does need to be able to have it in the driveway as opposed to off-site somewhere else or something like that.
All right. Is there anyone here to speak in favor of this application? Step right up, sir. Give us your name and your address.
Fellow neighbors, esteemed board, my name is Chuck Mantione. I live at 670 Hellendale Road. I've lived there for the past 23 years with my wife and 2 daughters and have raised a family there. I have no objection whatsoever to Chris parking his car there. I'm kitty corner to the property. I see it every morning. It doesn't bother me. As a matter of fact, it's quite pleasant to look at. It's bright, it's well-maintained, it's pleasant-looking. I don't have an issue with it. Neither does my wife. We feel that, Chris needs to make a living, and in making a living, he's able to pay his mortgage and put food on the table, pay his other bills, including his school and property taxes. I have absolutely no issue whatsoever with him parking the vehicle there, and I don't see why anyone else would as well. I'm an immediate neighbor. So I'm not down a side street. I'm not 3 streets over, just trying to make some ruckus. I see the vehicle every morning. So I would hope that the esteemed board would grant Chris and his wife the variance to allow him to park the cube vehicle there. I might also add that there is no overhead wires or anything above the vehicle, so there's no danger in that regard. I know of other neighbors down the street that also have work vehicles that are actually parked in their driveway. They may not be a cube vehicle, but they still have commercial tags on them. And they use that for their business as well. I believe it would be a hardship for Chris to park his vehicle off-site. He leaves early in the morning, comes home late at night. He maintains his property meticulously. I've had no issue. I've been there through 3 other neighbors, including Chris, who's a recent transplant. So, in closing, I would just hope that you would seriously consider granting the variance that he's requested. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else here that wishes to speak in favor of the application? Anyone here that wishes to speak in opposition to the application? Anyone who'd like to talk to us about commercial trucks and anything like that? Seeing none, we'll close the hearing with respect to this case. Move on to the next case on the agenda.
ZB 1701-2, upon the matter of request by Anna Ellis for a special use permit to harbor 7 hens with coop and run pursuant to Section 23570 of Rondequoit Town Code on premises 42 Viewcrest Drive in an R1 residential district.
Good evening. My name is Anna Ellis. This is my boyfriend, James Brown. We're here in regards to the property at 42 Viewcrest Drive, which we're currently under contract for purchasing. We are applying for a special use permit.
Excuse me?
Yes.
Could you raise your right hand?
Oh, sorry.
Do you swear or affirm that everything you say tonight will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Okay.
So yeah, we were applying for a special use permit for our 7 hens that we've had for almost 4 years now, that we've kept in our backyard. And
Just for clarification purposes, the 7 hens have been residing with you in the town of Penfield?
they have.
Okay.
So the pictures of this coop that you have, that's the one in Penfield?
Yes.
Okay. And then the plans for the new coop.
Yep. We thought it was a little better suited for the space.
How long have you had the hens?
Just about, it'll be 4 years in March.
Did you have to get a permit in Penfield?
There was a bit of a misunderstanding in Penfield, which is what's led to this. So the way Penfield Code is written, it's stated that for residential, you're not allowed to have livestock without having 5 acres. And then in an agricultural area of the codes, it lists livestock and poultry as 2 separate entities. I grew up on a farm. Livestock to me has 4 legs. When I was looking for the property with my realtor, she knew of another couple who had chickens in Penfield on an acre of land. We went through the code. I did talk to animal control at Penfield, but there wasn't much of an answer back on that. Knew of other people who had chickens, so there was misunderstanding, and so we did get a violation on Veterans Day this past in November. And the town's been great as far, there wasn't a complaint. It was somebody who was asking actually about getting chickens. They knew that we had chickens. Obviously, we weren't trying to hide anything if you look at our setup. So yeah, we weren't aware of the problem. And so like I said, in the meantime, they have let us keep them there. We're in touch with the town. They've been great. Like I said, it didn't come from a complaint of any
You
kind.
have to sell a home there?
Well, I'll be renting it out, but yeah, this is causing our move.
Okay.
Now, I don't know how much research you've done into chickens in Arundecoit. We have quite a history of chickens applications on our dockets going back about 3 or 4 years or more.
Okay.
And as a general matter, what we've done is imposed a number of conditions on chickens in backyards.
Yep.
One being that we want to have the chickens inspected or examined annually by a veterinarian.
Yep.
And a certificate provided that says that they're in good health. We want the coop to be at least 8 feet or more from fences and neighbors. You have how many? 7?
We have 7.
The only time that I can recall that we've approved 7 is when there's already been 7, and generally what we do is we put down a lower number, like 4.
That we'd work
and say
towards.
that you cannot replace any
Yeah.
of them. We also ask the town to go out and inspect a year later after we've granted the permit and report back to us with respect to any neighbor issues or health issues, things like that. And as I mentioned, we don't allow you to replace the hens for a period of time.
Yep.
Right? The last time we did it last month, that was for a 5-year period. Right? Are you okay with those conditions?
Absolutely. Actually, and the one thing that wasn't in the information, I didn't have a survey map at the time, but I do now. So I have copies of that if you'd like, and I've sort of done a little highlighter in of where we're sort of thinking of putting the coop. We are open to whatever conditions you set on. We like having them as close to us as possible. We like seeing
Well,
them. So.
you submitted the aerial photograph,
Right, we didn't have the official survey map. We do now.
and I assume that the coop and the run area that you've put is, it appears from the photo that it's going to be well over 8 feet from any boundary.
Like I said, we like them front and center.
And also appears that you have, now, there's a red line and a yellow line around. Is this a fenced-in yard?
Yes, the backyard does have a fence around it.
All right,
Yep.
so the coop's in the middle of a fenced-in backyard,
Yep.
and obviously you've got a lot of experience in dealing with
Yeah, we
chickens and coops.
both grew up with farms in northern New York. James, you worked on a dairy farm for a long time, and I grew up with chickens on my stepfather's farm. And then we've had these. There was a little bit of a learning curve initially, lost 2, but we now have predator proofing down. We've never had any sort of infestation of any kind. I know that rats are a concern in the city right now. We keep everything clean. We keep all of our food enclosed in metal containers. The chickens aren't free range. They stay in the coop. We've never had any other issues. We don't use a heater of any kind, so there's no risk of fire. It's just the composting that keeps them warm, and we have cold hardy chickens. So
Have you talked to your prospective neighbors?
So we have issued, we talked to each direct neighbor initially, and we handed out information, the letter of intent, a little bit about us, and dropped that off in a letter form to all of our neighbors, the three behind, three going down each side and two across the street, and said to please reach out to us if there's any concerns that we could answer before coming to the meeting. We did get one email response from one of our neighbors that she said she had no objection and hoped that we were successful in obtaining a special use permit. I have that copy of the email. Other than that, we did not hear anything back, but we're always. Oh yeah, when we first met with a neighbor on the one side, she was a little concerned of dander, a feather dander allergy. So, but we gave her the information and our phone number and everything, and never heard anything with any other questions after that.
Have you had any issues other than the issues with the town that you mentioned earlier with chickens that you've had in Penfield?
No, our neighbors, I enclosed the one letter. We would have gotten a letter from our other neighbor who loves our chickens, but he's 85 and doesn't have a computer. But he's an old farmer, and he comes to visit them all the time. We're always open to people seeing the setup, again, answering any questions about them.
Well, you have a very good letter of support in the packet, stating how clean you keep the place and
Yeah.
that type of thing. Now, of course, our concern too is disease. We have to think about that. And we had a board member who was religiously brought up the disease situation with chickens. He's no longer on the board, not because of that.
Right.
But I noticed the other day in the paper, I say the other day, December 31st, an article about chickens can be helpful.
Yes. They
see
eat
that
ticks.
article?
I got sick with Lyme disease in 2007. One of the bigger benefits of them is that they do eat insects, including ticks.
They can actually help keep the place clean.
That's right.
I did not know that.
Yep.
I was listening to Bob for too many years.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot of misunderstanding about disease with chickens. I mean, yes, we hear about salmonella, but that's from contact with, eggs and there being a bad egg. So, we're not putting anybody else at risk with salmonella. We eat the eggs. I mean, we're happy to share it. In the summer, we have too many, so we share them. Avian bird flu, I'm completely up to date on. We followed it this past summer when it was throughout the Midwest. That's one of the reasons we keep a cover over the coop, and the new one will have a solid roof cover. We had plans, if it started getting closer, that we would take down our bird feeders. But again, it's something, we're pretty aware of the situations, but disease-wise, there's nothing. I mean, chickens are, as you just pointed out, are
Wash your hands.
Yes, like with anything.
Just wash your hands, yeah.
There's one other point, I don't think we brought it up, is we have asked because of rodent issues.
Yes.
You say that you have a buried hardware cloth skirt around, but what we've asked is when people put chicken wire or whatever it is around there, that they bury it, I think 24 inches is what we've asked people to do, because you said yours is not on a foundation. Would you have any problem with that?
No, that's fine. And again, we want to keep it as predator-proof as possible. Yeah, absolutely, that's fine.
You mentioned something about losing a couple of predators at the first.
Yes, early on.
How did that happen?
Because I had an electric fence around them. This was before my handyman moved in. I had an electric fence around them, and it was when I first got them, and I didn't want to put up to full charge while they were still learning that was a barrier, and a fox got one of them. And then I didn't have, I grew up on a farm. Our chickens ran all over the place. We never lost any to predators. I lost one to a hawk, so that's why we now have overhead coverage.
Okay.
Yes, like I said, bit of a learning curve at the beginning.
All right.
Are you in the process of purchasing this property?
We are.
Okay, because you're not owners right now.
We are not.
No.
We're under contract.
Is the contract subject to getting this?
No, it's not. We couldn't, the seller wasn't going to allow that, so.
Have you submitted a copy of the purchase contract to the town?
Yep, and I have one here if you need one.
Okay,
But I think, I handed it all.
Because we've had an issue in the past with another chicken application who had a lease on the property and didn't submit anything from the landowner saying that it was okay, but as long as you've got a contract.
Yep.
Would you mind passing that up?
No.
Sounds like you have all your ducks in order.
Oh, chickens.
Chickens.
Oh, chickens.
Chickens in a row.
Well, we've got all the chickens crossing their little beaks tonight, so.
How does Lola feel about moving to Arundecoit?
Lola's very excited about it, but I know. Well, you know, like I said, they do have names. They're part of our family for sure.
Donna,
They already know me as the crazy
would
chicken
there be
lady
any
now.
issues with another building on the property? Because there's like an 8x8 shed already in the backyard, and then the size of the coop?
Yeah, these don't count toward coverage,
Okay.
lot coverage.
Mr. Chairman, again, when I did my research, Dan Meyer, 52, as you faced north, the right side neighbor, said he didn't have any problems with chickens. Jim Bellevue, 32, Viewcrest on the left side, facing north, the immediate neighbor said no, that he had noticed rats, there's raccoons, and his concerns was also hawk predators. So we got 1-on-1 for the immediate neighbors. The other neighbors, when I was there, weren't home.
But you're going to have it covered, right? And you're having the submerged barrier?
Yep.
That, the food's going to be locked up in a metal cage inside the house.
Yeah.
Because that's actually what draws vermin,
Yeah.
would be loose food pellets laying around. So that's going to be locked up in a metal canister.
Okay.
And we keep the food hanging. I mean, I know all the things to do if there was any signs of there being a problem. As far you take the food out at night, you take the water out at night. There are feeders specifically that the chicken has to be standing on for it to open. We don't currently have that because we've never had a problem, but there
We
are
are
lots
prepared
of
to take those
options.
steps.
But the biggest thing, as James said, is keeping the food. We have it in a metal garbage can sealed, and it'll be inside on the back part of our house. We have like a little mud room.
Okay. All right. Any other questions or comments from the members of the board? Is there anyone here who wishes to speak in favor of the application? Anyone here who wishes to speak in opposition to the application? Step right up, folks. And before you begin, I'd like to point out one thing just to help clarify the conversation. All right? Unlike the variance applications that we usually deal with where we're asked to make exceptions to the rules that the town board has generally put in place, this is a special use permit. And a special use permit means that the town board has decided that chickens are okay, as a general rule, in the town, and that it's okay for people to have chickens in the town as a general rule. And what we're charged with doing is determining whether or not there are conditions that should be imposed on that in order to address any concerns that the neighbors would have or anything that could be detrimental to the neighborhood. So it's not a question for us. The question is not, can they have chickens or can they not have chickens? The question is, what terms and conditions should be imposed in order for them to be able to have chickens on the property? We've turned down applicants in the past because their yards are way too small. They didn't have any sense of what they were really doing that we could gather from what they presented to us. So I just wanted to clarify that because some people get, come up and talk to us for a long time about what the problems are with chickens, and that's the town, the town board would have to change and say, no, like apparently they may have done in Penfield and say, you know, you gotta have X, Y, and Z to have chickens. So I just wanted to clarify that for you.
Okay.
And if you could just give us your name and your address for the minutes.
Sure, James Bellevue. This is Rebecca Abbey. We live at 32 Viewcrest Drive,
Is that right next door?
right next door. Do we do the?
No, you don't, we don't
No?
swear only the
Oh, just the-
applicants,
okay.
because we had a situation in the past where an applicant gave us some information that wasn't accurate,
Okay.
and we didn't have a remedy, but by swearing the applicant in, we now have remedies. So, for you, we don't need any remedies.
All right.
You're just a neighbor expressing concerns.
Okay. So yes, we do live directly next door to the proposed chicken situation, and we're here to ask the town board to not approve this proposal. We believe chickens belong on farms, not on residential roads in Arundequite. The houses and the backyards are, while there may be enough room to meet the requirements, they're pretty close together. And we're worried about the noise as well as the smell. I've been on farms. I know what chickens smell like. It's not that pleasant. I don't want to wake up on a Sunday morning and smell and hear chickens right outside my windows, which is where they're going to be. We're also worried about predators. I mean, they might be all fenced in, but there are hawks. There's a lot of cats in the neighborhood. I've seen raccoons around, and at one point next door, the house next door was vacant for a while, and there was a rat situation there that the town had to come out and clean the yard up and everything.
This house that we're talking about?
No, the one on the other side.
Other side.
Yeah, that was quite a while ago, but that did occur. So I guess rats are a concern. I'm also concerned about property values. If I decide to sell my house in a few years, I can't see how half a dozen or more chickens next door is a big selling point. So that's why we're asking you to say no to the chickens in our neighborhood. Anything to add?
Well, we understand that the chickens are going to be safe from the predators, but our grandchildren that are in the backyard and the neighbors' cats and our dogs, whatever, they're not going to be because the predators are still going to come. They're going to smell those chickens. I grew up in Wyoming County. I know chickens. They're going to come. When they find they can't get to the chickens, they're going to get to whatever else they can, whatever animal or little kid that, right now we can let the 4, 5, 6-year-old be in the backyard. It's fenced in, but if we've got something drawing predators in, then that's a concern for us. And even if the feed is inside, animals know where there's chickens, where there's cows, whatever, there's going to be some feed around, and it is going to draw predators. And it's going to draw rodents, and they are going to come, and our backyards are right on top of one another. Plus, the smell and the feathers, everything's going to blow into our yard. So then we are going to have to be dealing with that. And that means that I won't be able to go in the backyard because if I'm out around all the dander from the feathers, I can't breathe. So that's not that takes our backyard right away from us. We won't be able to use it.
You live east or west of the...
We live west.
West.
Were you talking about east or west around the Arundequite?
Oh,
East or west of the house?
The house. In other words,
I
which
thought you
way?
were talking about...
No.
Living west of the house, the wind's blowing from the west, will it affect them as, their concern? And
Anything else?
Nope.
Thank
Okay.
you. Thank you.
Appreciate it.
My name is Gail Markle. I live at 27 Viewcrest Drive, and I'm against it. I feel the houses are too close. I live across the street. What if a chicken comes out from the gate and my dog will be chasing after it? There's other kids around there. That's what my concern is.
Okay, thank you.
I'm Robert DeMarco, lived at 27 Viewcrest Drive, 55 years. Can't believe we're going to have chickens. Hard to believe. So I'm against it 100%.
All right. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
The applicant, is there anybody here who'd like to talk in general about chickens in backyards, anything like that? Would the applicant like to address anything that was raised during the public input portion?
Yeah, there was the one question about whether the house was on the west or not. It is on the west, and the wind comes from the west, so it would be across their yard first and then our yard. But as far as, while I have every concern about an allergy, I mean, there's birds, people have bird feeders out, there's feathers, and the chickens are in a contained with hardware cloth, which keeps everything in the coop area. Hardware cloth is a very fine cloth, and like I said, we don't free range them. They're in the coop area.
They're in the coop in the run area
Yep.
at all times.
And as I explained in the letter of intent, which I did make sure all the neighbors had, we do a deep litter method for composting in the coop. It does not give off a smell. Our neighbors can attest to that we currently have. They mention it in their letter, but a deep litter method creates microbes that basically continue to compost and keeps a properly running compost, doesn't have a smell to it.
And what about noise from the chicken?
We don't have a rooster. I mean, the girls every once in a while will, make a little noise, but nothing significant. Again, I think it's mentioned in the letter from our current neighbors that it's not an issue. We do put them in at night. In the new coop structure, you'll see specifically they go into a fully enclosed area until we let them out in the morning.
And you're going to be placing this towards the back of the property.
Sort of in the middle of the property, possibly at a slight diagonal.
I was looking at the...
Yep, I know. It's sort of hard to figure out exactly on there because of the dimensions and...
Right, but that's roughly the positioning that you have in mind is in the back corner?
Yep, it'd be in probably a little further towards our house.
But it'll be at least 10 feet from the sidelines.
Yeah.
In terms of noise, one extra question. Are the chickens in any way louder than dogs barking?
No.
So dogs are
Thank
louder
you.
than the
Yeah,
chickens?
no, they're not. And as far as attracting predators, cats in the neighborhood are attracting as many hawks as a chicken, and the chickens have overhead. I mean,
Hawk's not going to see them.
yeah, I don't think it's any different from, like I said, any cats or small dogs or anything else that would be around. They're all game for, if a hawk's going to attack, they're looking for anything small, a chipmunk, anything, It's,
Have you shown your neighbors, the ones with the concerns, picture of this coop?
no, but I do have it here.
I mean, it might,
No, we didn't put, it wasn't enclosed in the,
it might put them
The
a little
packet.
more at ease, knowing that they are going to be strictly enclosed. I mean, it does, if it's built the way it's, you
Yeah.
build it the way it's in this brochure.
All right. Any other questions or concerns that you wanted to address? All right, then we'll close the hearing with respect to that matter and move on to the next matter that's on our agenda.
ZB 1701-3, upon the matter request by Stantec Consulting Services, acting as agent for Providence Housing Development Corp. for area variances to construct one two-story, 30-unit senior housing apartment building with less than required front, side, and rear setbacks, and with less than required parking and lot area on premises 4225 Culver Road, and area variances to construct one three-story, 40-unit senior housing apartment building with less than required side and rear setbacks, with less than required parking and lot area, and exceeding maximum height, building height on premises 4250 Culver Road in an R5 residential district.
Good evening, board members. My name is Thomas Palumbo from Stantec Consulting Services, Inc., 61 Commercial Street.
Raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm that everything you say tonight will be the truth, whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
Great. So we're here this evening representing Providence Housing Development Corporation. We've been in this process, this approval process, to get 70 affordable senior housing units approved at these two properties.
What do you mean by affordable?
So they're affordable for folks who have incomes that range between 50% and 80% of the average mean income. So
Average mean income in Rondequoit or?
in the, no, it's a HUD guideline.
A HUD guideline, okay, all right.
So it has a range of incomes allowable. So the project is really almost like a continuation of the St. Siloam's Apartments that were done in 2009. That project has 45 units in it. It's been very, very successful, has quite a waiting list associated with it, and I think the need for affordable senior housing is really well documented, not only in Arundequoit, but in the larger community as well. So we've got basically the two parcels, 4225, which is on the east side of 4225, which is on the west side of Culver Road, and then 4250, which is on the east side.
And that's where the two churches are now, right?
That's where the two churches are correct, are where they're located right now. The churches would be removed, and the new apartment buildings would be constructed in there. Also associated with the 4250 is we're looking to do some community services in there. It's a one-story facility on the north end of the east building. And those services would be not only for residents, but also for folks that are in the nearby community. There'd be day services. Providence and St. Anne's are working together. St. Anne's will be providing those services at that location. So it helps, it's kind of like an outreach to kind of get more services out into the community, and then serve the population up in that area. And the whole idea with these types of projects is it lets people from the area have a place to age, in place, in their neighborhood. And I think, we've all kind of heard the way that works. But like St. Siloam's, there's a number of variances that are required to make this kind of all fit. We've worked quite diligently with staff, planning board, town board, kind of come up with what we feel is a reasonable plan. We really followed the 2014 Comprehensive Master Plan, particularly that Chapter 5, which is the community design section. Now, we recognize, I think the plan recognizes some of the things it recommends aren't really, the code wasn't written around those. This was kind of developed after the code has been around. So there's some things that were, that are, I would say, just not allowed right now. So generally, we're looking at strengthening the street line along Culver Road as the primary access way. So really orienting the buildings towards the street, putting the parking behind the buildings, trying to reinforce that pedestrian corridor, which the main corridor here is Culver. Trying to develop a sense of place with buildings, with the building orientation, the site orientation, kind of trying to establish some green spaces that kind of give some unique areas, some unique spaces there. Minimizing paved services, using shared parking, providing pedestrian linkages to the roadways. And we think this project really makes a pretty nice transitional use from the single-family parcels, which is primarily to the south, to the more commercial properties, which is to the north here. And the other part that we really need to play into this is, that plays a role in this is getting an adequate number of units so that we can make the affordable aspect of it feasible. There's a lot of, let's say, prospectuses that need to be put together. The project does get funding through New York State, so we need to show that it can be feasible and over the long haul for maintenance and the whole bit.
As I understand it, Providence Housing is a not-for-profit.
That's correct.
One question I have, and you touched on this earlier. You said that this design is really in accord with the 2014 master plan, but the zoning kind of predates that, and this doesn't match the zoning, which is why you're getting the variances. Have you gone to the town board to ask the town board to adjust the zoning requirements in this area? Because you're asking for a lot of variances.
So we went from an R1 zone to an R5 zone. We've been rezoned. That was accomplished in October, and we had a final and preliminary site plan approval on December 19th of 2016. So
So the town has repurposed this or rezoned it to accommodate this, but the setbacks is the issue, the only issue that you're coming to. So the town allows this in this area. You're just coming here to allow to get the setback variances.
right, there's, as you said, there's a number of them. There's setback variances. We run into things with area, parking, and then there's a height variance.
And if I recall, with the exception of the height variance, the question isn't whether or not you can build these buildings on those properties, it's where you can build them. And if we were to turn down the request for the setback variances, you could still build the buildings.
We would need to move them around.
You'd just move them on the lot, and you'd move parking to be visible on the Culver Road sides, and it would make it less desirable and less attractive. So most of the setback variances are just designed for aesthetic and practical reasons in terms of screening parking from the road and making it more attractive. And then the height is just to accommodate, to be able to have that third floor, to have the number of units at the size that's going to be attractive, that's going to make it a feasible project. Is that about a fair summary?
It is. I think on the height, so the height variance allows us to do a couple of things. We have, it allows us to get a little more green space left in the north and south here. If you look at the way this is kind of laid out, we kind of put an angle in the building. It picks up from the patio homes across the way, so we kind of end up with like a little green spot.
Excuse me, Tom. Would you mind dropping the handheld mic and turning it on so that any viewers at home can enjoy the conversation as well?
Okay.
Thank you.
So we end up with a green space south of the 4250 building, which is kind of across the street from our 4225 building. And then we also have a nice little green space, which is right at the corner of Wacona and Park Road. And then, so right across the street, you'll see these buildings are right tight to the right-of-way line. This building is one story, so it gives us, if you look at the elevations, it gives us some variation in the height. So we looked around at a lot of, the whole three-story issue in the height and a lot of other properties. What we find is in a lot of these more village-like neighborhoods or village-like character neighborhoods, the two-story buildings are like extra tall two-story. Sometimes you get an extra parapet height. Really tried to drive the height up. Around the corner on Point Pleasant Road, there's the school, really tall two-story, right with single family all the way around it. We looked at some other villages, local villages. They all have a mixture of 3 to single story, and that variation kind of helps make little pockets and little areas in the, within the village areas. So we thought this one-story building is quite different if you look at it from perspective. And it lets us do something that, they have a little variation along through there. Now, we've been working on this with detailing like how much brick and different types of siding, the variation in the front of the building. And then as you get to this far point, it turns the corner and it kind of comes around. So you end up with a face of this building facing south, kind of face of this building facing south. And it does allow us to get a little bit more variation into the project. What we did also does is, right now we have this building that's right flat. This is the existing church right tight to that back property line. The modification allows us to kind of put a little corner in there, and it just has a couple of pinch points in these back corners. But it allows us now to, from our planning board meeting, we're going to extend the plantings along that eastern property line south. There's a board-on-board fence or a stockade fence along here. We're going to clean that up. And then we're adding some more plantings down in 3 from our planning board.
Tom, can you walk me through both buildings if we, and point at each variance so that we can understand it and see? I mean, obviously, we have the packet, and it says rear point,
Right.
and side. But if you and I could go down through them, I'd appreciate it. And start with 4250.
Okay.
4250 saying the rear.
So 4250, this caught me when I was writing this, so. 4250, the legal frontage is defined as Wacona, because it's the narrowest front. So we have a side yard, we have a variance along Culver Road for this, considered a side yard setback.
All right, so starting from the top of what we're looking, you've got the rear, and it says requirement 50 feet, and you have 1 foot to 25 feet requesting. So that would be if I'm not mistaken, is that the south side of this building?
Let me get us on the right spot.
4250.
So 4250. We have a rear yard, that's the south piece down here.
Right, so that's saying that the shortest,
We're looking for 15 feet as opposed to 50 is what's required.
and see, it shows here 1 to 25, and plus or minus 1 to 25. So I'm thinking the 1 is the very corner, the south corner of, or,
No, what are you I'm sorry, what are you referring to?
well,
We're looking at the actual application document.
See, I'm looking-
It says
I'm looking-
4250 Culver Road on it, and it identifies
This one.
the application that's signed by
come on over and I'll show you.
Mark.
Just for clarification, for anybody who's watching at home, the applicant fills out the top portion of the application. It's town staff that helps to calculate what the variance
So,
request is.
Again, right here, and we're 4250, so that's this building, right? Okay. It's saying that there's a 50 on the rear, which I'm assuming this is the rear.
If you look at the letter. The letter of intent.
Mhm.
So which is why in here, if you look at the line, it's 10 feet.
This is 10 feet here?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so they've got, give or take this, so this is actually 10 feet requested, okay? So the variance is gonna be 40 feet. Yep. Okay, so right here,
This is all 4275, and this is all
Mr. Chairman, would it be helpful for the town to walk us through what they prepared, or?
Well, just to clarify what we noticed that the letter of intent has some numbers that are a little different than the numbers that are on the application that were written in by the town, but they're relatively close. The town says that they're looking for a 25-foot variance. The letter says they're looking for a 35-foot variance, so it's not significant, but there was a little distinction. But if the town would still like to walk us through it, we have no issue with that. Just wanted to clarify for everyone else what we were doing, trying to figure that out.
well, again,
I'd like to, just so it's clear,
okay, that first,
Yeah.
on 4250, the rear setback, which is a requirement of 50 feet, based on your plans here, it's 15 feet you're looking for.
Correct. That's correct.
Okay, so the request is 15 feet, so there's 35 feet variance. Okay?
And that's along Culver Road.
No, that's the south, that's that south line right there, yeah.
That's this line here is considered the rear setback. The side Culver Road is a side setback.
Side setback is
And that-
required 25.
Well, actually,
Or
with this-
distance equal to the height of the building.
yeah, so this
whichever's
building is
greater.
37 feet because it's the height of the building.
Okay,
And we're looking for 15 feet along Culver.
so then that's a 22-foot variance?
That's correct.
Okay.
Yes.
See, the town had it written down as a 10-foot variance. Okay, the next one is the lot, or
The east property line, the
East
side
property line.
side setback. That's this line here.
right?
One correction. The 30-foot variance is the one height. Is it the last line at the bottom? Requesting 30-foot code requirement, 37 and 7. I think that may be,
30 feet's the code requirement, 37 is the request for the building height.
okay.
Yeah.
So is that
The-
what we're talking about? We're talking
The
about
comment regarding building height previously was that establishes the applicable side setback. So the code requirement is either it's a certain number or it's equal to the height of the building if the height of the building is greater.
Okay.
So here, since the height of the building is greater than the underlying generic setback requirement, it's equal to 37 feet, which is the height. So that's the side setback for this project.
For this 4250, when we go to 4225, it's different because that's only a two-story building.
Okay, so let's stay on this one first and get
yeah.
through it. Okay? Next one is the east line,
The east line, correct?
which
is-
says on my
Right.
sheet, 25 is the code requirement, 25 is, so there is
So the east is a side setback.
side setback,
So
and
the
they're
re-
saying to go to a 0 variance, but that doesn't make sense, because you've got,
Be no variance.
Well, I'll give you a little history on that. So
I think what he's saying in the letter is that the church had a 0
Yeah. The
setback.
church,
They're looking for a,
we're looking for
24
24
foot.
feet.
So a 13-foot variance.
Yeah, as opposed to 37. So back in 2006, when we were doing the variances for the St. Salome's apartment building, we had contemplated a connection between the apartment building and the church. So we had, and I don't know if it's still in, whether it's in force or not, we had a zero setback variance on both of these, either side of this property line for a connection
so you
point.
could connect.
Yeah.
so,
In this case, we're not doing a connection, and we're looking for 24 feet is basically where we are.
24, 25. It says 25 on your plans, and it's, the request is 25, it's showing a 0 variance, which I don't get.
That's
No,
because
we're
the height.
showing, yeah, so we're looking for, the reason why we request 24 feet, we dimensioned at 25. We
Okay,
requested 24, so we've got a little bit of wiggle room in there.
all
So
right,
if something moves and we build it a little off, I mean, sometimes it's, we don't end
Okay.
up having to come back and do another variance. And so, like you'll see, we've got our dimensions, like our front dimension's 15, our back dimension is 15. We're looking for a 15-foot setback. We're looking for a 24 on this side, so that we've got a little bit of room in there to make sure we get everything to fit in there. So we've tried to, that's why on the plans, we've gone through these, and, in the notes, we've kind of gone through and really tried to identify specifically what the numbers are.
My question is,
all right. We're not, go,
okay,
I want to finish it, so we've got them all
You're fine,
down
Mike.
correctly.
Yep.
Because right now, they're not correct. The next one is lot coverage. You've got, code requires 3,000 square foot per unit, I take it,
Yep.
and you're at 1268 per square foot. So the variance on that is 6740.
So Yeah, so we asked for a variance at 1250. We're really, like, our hard calculations at 1268. So we're just rounding off what the variance request is.
So is the variance the 1268 or the difference of 3,000 to 1268, which would be 7?
It would be the difference.
So 732 is the
1732.
variance, right?
1,732 square feet per unit.
Or 1,000, I'm sorry.
Except, if I understand you correctly, you're asking for 1250. You figure
That's
that you're
correct.
probably going to do 1268, so it'll
That's
probably be less.
Right.
But you want the 1250 to be able to make sure that you can meet your feasibility issues and things of that.
Just, you know, and it really is just a matter of, we're looking at a difference in, like, you know, the lot's like 1.022 acres, you know, so when you start, you know, doing the math on some of that stuff, there's some rounding that can occur in there. And we're rounding things like, you know, we're rounding them down a little bit or in our favor a little bit, quite honestly.
So you're rounding down to get a little greater variance that you might not need all of it, but if you need it, you've got it. And if you don't need it, you won't use it.
That's right.
Because you want to make them as big as you can, to make them as feasible as you can.
Well, we're not, I mean, these plans are pretty far along. We're probably not going to make them any bigger than what we are, but you know,
Just
something
mean
is-
the 1268 versus 1250, for the 18 square feet.
Right.
You know, if you can work that in with it, that's great, and if you can't, you're okay in terms of the way you're asking for the variances.
Correct.
Okay.
So the variance on that is 1,732 feet.
Or are you looking for 1750?
1750.
1750.
But he's probably going to build at,
I get it.
Yeah.
I get it. Give or take.
We're just trying to figure out what motions have to
Yeah.
be made.
right.
Okay.
Oh, no, I understand.
Question on the difference if you build them to the 1250, where would that extra space be picked up? Is that going to change the footprint and then change some of the variances that are being requested with respect to setbacks? I mean, where's that additional space going to go?
No, the idea would be that it would not affect the other setbacks. It's kind of why we've done it kind of the way we've approached it. I think if someone were to go in and maybe measure it, you know, to the outside of a wall or measure it a little differently, you might find rather than 1,268 square feet, maybe they're going to get 1,262 or something like that. So it really is a, you know, it's really not that many square feet when you look at it, because it applies to lot area,
Right.
which is the bigger of the.
Okay, okay, last one on that building is the, well, there's two more. There's the
Parking.
Parking spaces. Requires 80 spaces. You're going to have 67 shared spaces, so your difference is what you're looking at as far as the variance.
Well, let me explain that one to you as well. So this lot is going to have no parking on it. So the request is 0 spaces per unit.
That's not
We
what's
have
here.
parking on, all the parking is on the 4260 parcel.
Yep.
We have a shared easement. We provided that easement with our application for parking.
So the spaces that would be attributable to the units in this property are available through the shared easement for the parking in the 67 spaces.
Based on the .75 spaces, right?
So by
So the
approving,
67 is for both buildings.
so by approving a variance that says 0 parking for this parcel, we're not saying no one's going to be able to park their car anywhere.
That's correct.
Okay, again, that's not on our variance, so we're saying 0 parking variance?
The variance would be to have 0 parking spaces on that specific property, and that would be
But the
because they're
shared-
sharing 67 spaces with the other property that has an excess amount of spaces.
Right.
So between
The
the
20,
two.
the 24 across the street is excess amount?
No, this
No.
This is,
The adjacent lot.
so this is
The ones that are there
Oh,
already.
all right.
distinct building. So these two buildings together will have 67 parking spaces. And they'll be able, and that basically gives them, so we were looking for was a a parking rate of 0.75 units per space, spaces per unit. It's 67, we're a little bit more, we're at 0.85, gives us a couple extra spaces in there.
All right, last one on that building is the height
This height,
is required 30, you want 37, so your variance is 7.
that's correct.
Okay, so there's, okay. Can we do the other one?
Yeah, just one question though. I want to, in essence, what you've done is you've started off with like the first phase of a project, and now you're moving into the second phase. If you presented it as a project in phases, you wouldn't need as many of these variances as you need. And
Except we've got lot lines, yeah.
no, but
Right.
no, but and then because that one's already done, completed, occupied. You're in essence starting over with financing and stuff, but it's just a continuation of what was begun several years ago, right?
Right.
And now you have the opportunity to expand across the street.
Yeah, it'll be, just to be clear, it'll be a different legal entity and stuff like
Right.
that, because that's how these things are funded.
Right.
These two projects are the same.
Right, that's their
On either
combined
side.
project, right? Yeah, okay. Now back to the one across the street,
Okay.
4225.
25. Now, the front
The front
is
is,
actually facing Culver, right?
the front is Dewberry.
Or Dewberry, okay.
Because there's
Throwing me a
the
curve all the way around.
narrowest side.
North, south, all right, Dewberry, so you got a 50-foot requirement, you're looking for 15 feet,
That's correct.
35-foot variance.
Yep.
That one's easy, okay.
And the current church was what?
The current church is,
16 and a half, I think you said.
16 and a half,
So the real difference that you're looking for is about 1.5 feet off of what's there now.
half of what's there.
Okay, rear is, point out the rear.
The rear,
Yeah, okay.
11.
11. Every time I come up with one, I'm in the wrong spot. Turn this sucker around, I'll be in the front row. All right,
the rear is along the north property line,
Okay, and you're looking, that's a 50-foot,
and we're looking for 11 feet off this back corner.
so you're looking for, so they had plus or minus, but it's 11 foot, so you're 39-foot variance. Second side,
And
Culver Road.
just for clarity, that 11 feet is at the narrowest.
That's correct.
And it widens out.
Culver Road is a side yard, so it's 25 feet of the building height. Now, we interpreted that as being the building height of this building, which is 26 feet. So the requirement's 26 feet, we're asking for 15 feet off
So
of
it's
Culver.
11-foot variance.
Yeah.
Got it, okay,
And on Birchwood,
same thing.
it's 26 feet, we're asking for 12. The existing building is 8.4 feet off the property line now.
On your plans, you've got 13,
That's right, that's a little bit of fluff room in there.
a little bit of fluff.
Because we're really gonna hold that 15 has gotta be, we've gotta be sure we're no more than 15 on Culver. We had a little bit of room on the back.
So you're
Basically,
looking
the
at a
backs is where we did.
13-foot side setback on that one, 11
Yep.
foot on the one, 13 on the other. Okay, last but, not last, 3,000 square feet, this one is gonna be, you want 1475,
That's correct.
so we're looking at 1525 as far as the variance, right?
Yep.
Square feet. All right, last,
Parking,
2 spaces per unit, you got 60 spaces.
looking for 7.75 spaces per unit or 23 spaces.
I'm sorry, say that again?
We do, at point, we could change it to .8 if that.
Say that again, please?
No, the request is .75 spaces for 0.75 spaces per unit, which would be 23, we're showing 24 right now.
Requesting 24. And you should have 60, right?
Right.
But you're using the spaces across the street to cover it.
No, what we find is that the users, these particularly these affordable senior units don't have a parking demand that's as high as what the code requires. We've done, 0.75 is how we based St. Salome apartment building. We've done 2 or 3 other projects the same way at 0.75, and it really is a pretty good, a good number for what the demand is at the site, because not as many folks have cars, not as many folks drive. They do ride share, they do things like that to get folks around.
But the town code states two parking places per unit.
Per unit, right.
And our code does not differentiate between the types of housing, so it's multifamily is multifamily is multifamily. It doesn't take into consideration different users and the potential for reduced parking need or demand, unfortunately. It's one of the...
Okay, well, I don't know enough about how that parking thing works out, obviously, but it seems like if you're supposed to have 2 parking spots and you end up with 3/4 of one,
that's correct.
It's an issue. That's why it's or isn't it? I mean, because where are people going to park?
Well, it would be, I mean, right, it would be an issue if everyone had cars. But what we find is that they don't have cars.
Our code hasn't caught up to more current, just as the planner and zoning administrator, I can tell you that the parking requirements haven't been updated in quite some time, and they don't reflect current market trends in terms of the parking need or demand and what's really needed. And as a result, that's how we end up with excessive parking in developments or plazas as a result. It's something historically that we're going to try to correct over time.
I mean, I can understand having 67 spaces for 40 units, but, it is kind of concerning to have 24 spaces for 30 units. In that building, the 4225 Culver, will there be any people working there, any staff? And where will they be parking?
Well, I want to, just be clear with you. It's 67 spaces for 40 units plus the 39 that are in the 4260 building. So 67 spaces for 79 units is what's there. I mean, that, I won't got to be up that. So the 67 spaces serves both buildings.
Okay.
That's how that was kind of set up. That's how that was set up before.
And we've both buildings on the east of Culver Road.
That's correct.
Okay. Let's go to the west.
And on the west, it's 30 units, and there's on what we've laid out is 24. But we've decided based on our research and what we've done for a requirement, you probably need 23. So we have an extra unit, an extra space in there.
Will there be anyone working in that building?
Well, there's folks there'll be a manager that'll
manage both properties.
Will manage both properties.
Okay.
There'll be 2 full-time equivalent maintenance guys, but they're really traveling around. They'll probably work all 3 of these properties.
And where will they be parking?
They'll probably be parking wherever they're doing work at the time. So with the 60, what we're trying to show is we've got at 67 spaces, I'm getting 0.85 units, 0.85 spaces per unit. It gives me about 3 or 4 extra spaces, and that provides room for the workers that are there.
Have there been any parking issues now in relation to the other building that's already been done that you're aware of?
No, and we've done Atwood Park and Gates. We've done Holy Rosary in the city. All at the same similar parking count requirement.
To the chairman's question, though, those are 67 parking spaces for only the first building, not for the 2 buildings. How many units are in the current building? How many apartments are in the standing building?
There's 39 apartments.
So there are 67 parking spaces for 39 units.
No, this whole area is parking.
Yeah, there's tons of parking.
It's a huge.
Yes, you're right.
We've counted the cars that use that. We've counted other projects. They've got a project in Westtown, which is in Chi-Li. They've got a few, suburban projects, one in Henrietta. So we kind of even use those more, another good thing with this site is it's on a bus line. A lot of those other locations, they're not on a bus line. So we have a good alternate transportation plan with this one. You want to come up? Sure. Just state your name.
My name is Mark Greisberger. I am the Executive Director of Providence Housing, and we're the current owner and manager of the existing St. Siloam's project.
Let me interrupt you 1 second.
Pardon?
You're an attorney and counselor at law, correct?
I am, sir.
So you're exempt from the requirement of being sworn because you have much bigger fish to fry if you give us misinformation.
Thank you. Thank you for reminding me. The issue of parking, most of our units are single-bedroom units occupied by individuals. We have the townhouses, which are here, have 2 bedrooms. I think we have 7 2-bedrooms proposed in each of the other new buildings. We have a couple 2 bedrooms here. 2 bedrooms is not a huge demand for it. It's usually when there's only one left, one person is taking the apartment. So because of the structure of 1-bedroom apartments, we don't need 2 cars. The individual, if they have a car, has only 1 car, not 2. The other thing we have in this project is very low turnover. People come and they stay. And it's basically aging in place. And as part of that process, their driving demands go down. And it's not a project where everybody gets up and leaves at 8 in the morning and goes to work, comes home at 5 o'clock at night. We get a little bit of coming and going all day. So what we look at it for traffic counts, 7 or 8 cars go in and out on an hourly basis, but it's pretty consistent throughout the day. This area had a lot of excess parking because when we built this initial project, there was still an active church open there. That parking got filled up on Sundays and on church holidays, and the parking lot was full. That church has been closed now for a little bit of time. We have a huge parking lot here where it exists right now, and we can accommodate a ton of more cars there. But you need to understand the nature of senior housing, primarily 1-bedroom senior housing, with the aging in place. This is not for people who are dependent. They will have cars when they move in, but the usage actually goes down quite a bit over the years. So we think we have, and again, and this is not our only senior project, we believe the parking at roughly 8 parking spots for each 10 units is more than adequate. Our staffing, we will have staff, we'll need about 3 or 4 cars. There'll be some drop-off at the community building. Cars will be coming in and out, dropping off people who will use the services that St. Anne's will be providing. But we don't see parking as being a huge issue here at all.
I mean, I know you're saying that there are trends in senior housing. I'm just going to do regular math. So we have 30 units. I'm talking about that property. We have 30 units.
Yes.
Did you say 6 of those units are 2-bedroom units?
No, there's 6 total.
6 total.
6 total, okay.
6 total.
So, okay, all right, I thought you said that. So there's 30 units, though.
I misspoke if I did.
Okay, all right. But there's 30 units in total, and we only want 20. So, I mean, I haven't heard or seen anything other than you just telling me that when there's senior housing, people don't own cars. Do you have this?
They don't own cars, they have 1 car, so your code requires, any apartment requires 2 units.
So if there's 1 car, there are 30 units, 1 car per unit is 30 cars. You're asking for 24.
Correct.
Where's the disconnect? I mean, what
Not everybody
data?
will have a car when they come in.
A minute ago, you also just said that when people first move in, they do have cars, but then as they stay there for a long time, they kind of get rid of their car. So if they all move in and have cars, that's 30 cars. A visitor is maybe 31
Theoretically,
cars.
that's possible, that at the initial rent-up, you could theoretically get 30 people with cars.
So my question is, what evidence or facts can you show us, other than you just giving us anecdotal information saying that you've done this before and it comes out to point A? What can we rely on, or what can I rely on to say, oh, you know what, he's not just making these numbers up, there's actually some validity to it? That's what I want to know, because 24 is
The
less than...
evidence is all anecdotal, frankly. And it bears much more relationship to reality than a code that says you needed 2 parking spots for one-bedroom apartments for seniors.
Okay, so,
Where's that-
but
there's a disconnect there as well. But, I mean,
I'm not
other than
referring to the
you going, sitting
2
there and
units.
watching what goes on in this building.
Well, I just mean this, if you've rattled off 5 other units around town.
Yes,
Could
all
you-
owned by Providence.
Okay, so owned by you, could you give us a letter saying that on these units, this is the amount of parking we have? I know this is the amount, we have this is how it's been at the beginning when we opened it up and went down? Do you know what I'm saying? So that's not anecdotal, that's numbers, those are hard numbers.
We could do that. We actually have counts. That
We have counts.
We looked at the counts. We had them go out, count them in the morning, count them in the afternoon, see if we had any spikes, kind of see what kind of a number we were getting.
Oh, so you've already done that kind of analysis there, okay.
That's
But
kind of
it's
how
not
we-
a guarantee that any particular day that's going to be the number. It's not a guarantee, but this is our best knowledge of what a site needs to operate functionally, that we can operate where people are not standing and not having a place to park.
And I
They may
think-
not be able to park
yeah.
next to the building, but there's a parking spot in the parking lot for
No,
it.
and I trust you, I mean, you're the expert on this, but right now I haven't seen anything to back up what you're saying. That's all I'm saying.
It is us just going out and doing counts at different times of the day. And then, whether you call that anecdotal or scientific evidence, I guess I'll leave it
empirical
up to
data.
you.
We can provide a letter with that.
If we need it, I mean, we'll see.
Is there an HFA standard for parking for these types of developments in upstate New York?
No, they basically rely on the towns to, as part of the planning zoning process, to come up with the right numbers.
So they haven't done a study about these types of units and parking demand or anything like that?
Actually, in Holy Rosary in the city, I think we're a little less. But again, there's a little stronger bus line. So that really does, I mean, it does play.
A different clientele. It's a whole,
clientele,
project is a little bit different.
Yeah, I mean, so we've been, we can provide data on other senior living projects as well.
Is there any alternative to expanding parking? I mean, obviously, I see how tight it is at this point.
We would have to reduce green space. We need a greater variance on green space if we, so it's the fine line that we're trying to preserve green space and make the project livable with some amenities, benches, and things of that.
I mean, we would look at probably going over here with parking.
We're trying to avoid curb cuts on Culver Road, which is what the county DOT would like us to do. So they want all the parking behind the buildings. So could we squeeze in maybe another couple of parking spots? We probably could, but it may become at a cost of some available green space.
I have a question. Sure. We talk about senior housing. I'm getting closer to that every day. So it's a real thing for me.
It is.
If I wanted to move there, what would the process? Would it involve an application, an interview?
You have to be income qualified first. So this is affordable. There are HUD guidelines that define affordability.
Okay.
Of the 70 units we're building, this project, which was 45 units, all of them, you had to be at 50% or less of area median income, which is a defined HUD number. What we find, we have a waiting list of 70 for our one-bedroom units and about 12 for our two-bedroom units. If you came to us and we qualified your income, but you were at 52% of area median income, we couldn't even take your application. This project we're doing for 70 units, 33 units will be at 50% or less of area median income. 37 are between 50 and 60 will be about I want to say 32, the other 5 will be from 60 to 80. We're trying to expand our market to seniors who are just above 50% of area median income, who we couldn't even talk to before. So we know there's a demand for 50%, because I've got a waiting list of 70 people here. What I can't tell you is the demand for above 50% to 80%, other than that they call and we tell them we can't get a few basic information, we can't go any farther with them. So this is a little bit different project from an affordability definition than our existing project.
But there's an interview process.
Well, yes, you do go through, you have to file an application. If more people apply than we have spaces, we actually do a lottery. The government requires that.
That's what I was curious about, a lottery. Okay.
Back to the parking part of it, in 4225, you've got a center island where in big letters you've got 24 written there, and then you have a snow storage lawn area to the west.
That's correct.
Is there any way to steal 5 spaces there?
You could.
We could.
We could put 8 spaces where that snow storage is.
And
Quite
we
honestly, we
haven't
just-
done it for what reason?
Just not to build extra parking. Quite honestly, I mean,
Try to preserve green space, which we'd have to come
Well,
back.
is
and-
that center island going to be green space or just a center island?
It's planted.
It's planned, it's green
It's got
space,
some plants, it's got
it's,
some trees
yeah.
in it. But we can, I mean, you know, that was,
I mean, is that something
We-
the planning board insisted on, or is that?
I don't want to say the planning board, I mean, this was it's been a pretty collaborative process between developer and town planning, and so this design is something that we all sort of worked on, a couple of workshops, couple of meetings. It represents a consensus of the best thinking of what the town would like to see, what we could afford to build, and still have a feasible project.
So,
But could stuff move around? I'm not going to say no until I know exactly what you're asking me to do.
we want, you know, we don't want to box ourselves into a corner either, right? We've got to provide parking for
Well,
our residents.
that would be the worry. I mean,
so if we-
obviously,
I
if
mean-
you've got 30 tenants
Yeah, I mean,
in
that-
that building, and all of a sudden you've got 28 cars,
Yeah.
and you've got 2 staffers that work out
I
of there.
think we'd be back to here to get more parking. If that became the problem, yeah, we'd be back here real fast.
Would you need a variance if we grant the variance for 24, and it turns out you're going to need 5 more units, the area on these maps that is lawn/snow storage, you're saying you can already convert those into parking spots if you needed to. Would you need any additional variance from the town or any kind of approvals to just go ahead and
We would probably need a site plan modification.
a site plan, but you would not need anything from this board?
No, 'cause
So if we
wouldn't be
granted the
looking to go
variance,
lower.
if we granted the variance for 24 and you
I
need
didn't need
more,
them all, right,
and you
right.
need more,
You're right.
then you can always put it in and you don't have to come back to us.
I'll defer to Ms.
As long as they were code compliant spaces.
Correct.
They would
Correct,
need to go
and-
back in for a modification to the
But
site
they
plan.
wouldn't come to us.
They
That would
wouldn't.
not be our
No,
board.
correct.
I got a question on, does anybody talk to the fire departments in this area if they can handle these high rises with elderly people
Yeah,
and getting around?
We did get a report from them during the site plan review process. They
From
were-
the fire marshal.
The fire marshal.
We had a public meeting at our existing facility here where we introduced the project to the neighbors. A couple of the volunteer firefighters came. One expressed some concern, the other one says, hey, I drive the truck, if someone's there, I'm getting through, don't worry about it. And I don't, it's not been an issue. We have plenty of hydrant coverage and everything else there. The buildings will have smoke detectors and fire alarms,
Fully sprinklered.
fully sprinklered.
I see the fire chief from Point Pleasant is here, and I'm glad you came, Jeff. I don't know if it's out of order to ask him to respond to anything or have an opinion, is that?
Well, he's free to, if the applicant wishes to have him join their presentation, that's fine.
He'll come up and
If
make his own
he
comments.
wants to speak, he can come up during one of the
Public
public
hearing,
input
yeah.
portions. Okay. We won't put you on the spot. Any other questions or comments from the board? So at this point, I'll open it up to public input. Is there anyone who wishes to speak in favor of this application? Is there anyone who wishes to speak in opposition to this application? Step right up.
Sure. Thanks. Hi, my name's Andrea Zona, and I live at 41 Outlook Drive. First, before I get started on my points, I just want to address a couple things that were, points that were made by the applicant. And I don't know if you know this or not, but it's, you know, the selling point has been stated that neighbors can remain in neighborhoods, but Arundecoit residents don't necessarily get preferred, any kind of preference. And seniors here is 55 up, and I don't consider myself anywhere close to a senior, but I'm close to that, so. And the waiting list from the old building does not transfer to the new buildings. Just some thoughts. I do appreciate the extra plantings they're gonna do because it's gonna separate my yard from, well, when they grow up the buildings. I'd like them to be, we've talked about the maturity of the buildings or the plantings, and I know they will need to cost more. They'll cost more, but it's going to be less than what I may be losing in property value by having an apartment behind me. My property is pie-shaped, and so my house is up at the top of the pie. And on this side here is the existing building, apartment building that they have that's 2 stories. And over here, and this is my fence line as well, over here is all the cottages. And right here is where they're going to put the 3-story building. So it's going to be a lot of apartment building to look at. Anyways, okay.
Could use your property on the board here?
Yes.
Her property on this color one is shown right here.
This one's right here.
Yeah.
So, and I have a picture, I took a picture from my house and see that. And I guess that, you know, the other concern is when there's apartment buildings near you, you're a fishbowl to them. I've had people come up to me in the grocery store and, you know, say, hey, aren't you the one with those flowers painted on your shed? I'm like, oh, yeah. So it's just, anyways, I guess my opposition here is to the 3rd story, because it's just going to make it, since I can't oppose the building anymore, the 3rd story on the 4250 is my issue. We were given the height of 37 feet, but, and correct me if I'm wrong, that height as defined by code is an average height between eaves and the ridge gable, hip, and gambrel roofs. And since 37 feet is only an average, that means it's going to be higher than that at its apex. A 3-story building does not fit in with the character of our neighborhood. It doesn't. There's not one other 3-story building in our section of town, not one. In fact, there's very few of those on Ridge Road, so why would we introduce them into the neighborhood setting? The height of the current 2-story building is taller than any other 2-story building in the area. And those of us who border the current building find it imposing, and I can only imagine how imposing a 3-story building will feel. And it's going to take away from the town center feel that we have, and it's going to be replaced by a city street feel. And when you walk down Culver, they're going to be right butted up to that Culver sidewalk, and you're going to be, you know, looking up quite a bit, at quite an angle. I know that they consider where I am commercial, but I live right behind, and I don't consider my home commercial, that's for sure. There's a whole bunch of houses bordering that property. It's going to affect our property values, and it already has. I mean, it's going to be there. But if granted the height variance, I think it just will compound that even more so. And, you know, I don't know where I'm going to make that up. Providence is going to make it up for it, and Town of Arundecoit isn't, and it's going to be all the homeowners that line there that are going to lose their property value. So that's a concern of mine, that it's even going to be more than it already is with the apartments back there. And there's no amount of landscaping that's going to replace, you know, to cloud that view straight away, which is why I would really like some mature plantings, but the zoning board thought those might be prohibitive.
I think you mean the planning board.
Yes. Thank you, sorry.
We'll take blame for anything we do, but.
I'm sorry. Let's see, I guess, I was very happy to hear, Mr. Thomas, that you speak to the fact that, you know, you are concerned about how the neighbors feel, and, you know, you would consider how you would feel if this was in your backyard. And that was music to my ears. So when you're looking at this decision about a 3-story building, I'd really like you to consider if this was adjacent to your property. I mean, my property line's on 2 sides, or I see it on 2 sides. So on page 9 of the master plan, it urges Arundecoit residents to reach higher than the low-hanging fruit. The temptation to implement recommendations quickly is understandable. People want and expect measurable progress. However, effective and sustainable community revitalization takes time. So I'd like you to consider our own master plan when you're thinking about 3 stories. So please vote no to 3 stories. That's all I have. Thank you.
Is there anyone else that wishes to speak in opposition to the application?
My name is Jeff Champion, 152 Queens Lane. I'm also the current district chief of Point Pleasant Fire District. Not going to state I'm in complete opposition to the plan, but a couple things I want to clarify. Like Carrie brought up, they've been in contact with the fire marshal. His job is to make sure that it meets the New York Life Fire Safety Codes, not the fire suppression. That's where I fall in. I'm not sure who the firefighters are that they talked to, but it was nobody out of my office. We have never been reached out to by Providence as far as the building of this and as far as our capabilities. We work with St. Salome's right now with 4260. It's a 2-story building. It's within our capabilities. My fire district covers 95% residential. 3 stories adds a whole new playing field for my department. By allowing the setbacks to change on the back side, that creates even bigger problems as far as accessing 3rd-story apartments if need to be rescued out windows or anything. These residents are told to shelter in place. If there's a fire on the 3rd floor, they're supposed to shelter in place and go to a window. It kind of ties our hands on the 3rd story for many spots. Parking. Saturday I went down. I counted 23 cars in that parking lot for the current building. Add another 70 units, whatever that averages out to, I think it's going to be at or exceed what they're planning on for parking currently. As he stated, when they first move in, it could be full. What that creates is a problem for me, for my apparatus to get in there. They're pushing for the green space. If you look here, all this green space, that means my apparatus is not able to access any of that should there be a fire. We have to park all out here, and that's what we would lose. There's no access for us to park any of our equipment to work on fire safety. There's no fire lanes. At least with the current building, we have 50% coverage. This one, we have very little coverage for our firefighting capabilities. Especially with the trees, as the trees mature, we lose even more space with that. So
You would also be able to use Culver Road, right?
for one side.
Right.
For one side, but not for 50% of it.
Okay.
And don't forget also, if I am utilizing Culver Road, based on if it's too close, there's setbacks for every story. I need eight feet optimally. So 3 stories, I need 24 feet out to set a ground ladder alone. I won't have that back here for some of these spots, that's for sure. Culver Road, if I set up a ladder truck, that ladder truck's gonna set up right there in the middle of Culver Road. I've got no other access to get around, I can't work around them, which then congregates Wacona Avenue and the backsides. So I'm kind of disappointed in Providence for not reaching out to the actual fire district who has to supply the fire coverage for this area, for us to work with them a little bit and have some input. I really would like to sit down, explain. There's a lot more reasons why I have concerns. Tax purposes, it runs the gamut. But right off the bat, I can tell you that a third story creates a huge problem with my current capabilities. Another thing to keep in mind, this town is currently covered by 2 ladder trucks. One's in Laurelton and one's in St. Paul. It's quite a distance for me to get a ladder truck there quickly.
Culver Road doesn't have a ladder truck?
They are currently do not have a ladder. It is being ordered, but it's not here, and I don't know when it will be delivered. And that's assuming it's not on another call when I call for it. We have mutual aid agreements, but that third story, it's not reachable by most ground ladders. So I don't deal with 3 stories anywhere else in my district. And like the other resident stated, there's not a lot of 3 stories. And where there are, there's plans in place by those fire districts. I was never notified by Providence about this third story and how we could work with them to make things work. It's kind of concerning. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Is there anyone else who wishes to speak with respect to the application? Seeing that, we'll invite the developer and the representative to address anything they'd like to address based on what came up in the public input portion.
Sure. I guess, a little surprised about the fire questions. We got a pretty extensive, report back by the fire marshal. It's typically where we get our comments on site plan.
Let me ask you a question. You adverse to meeting with the fire department to
No.
talk with them about how you can arrange to make the third floor
More
safe?
accessible? Yeah. No, we definitely would need to do that.
What would it do to the project without having a third floor?
It would do a few things. It would decrease probably our unit count. We would definitely probably lose, we would push forward up into this area. We'd have to push back. So it's going to, in my opinion, it's not going to make it as nice of a project. I think the 3-story gives us some, like I was talking about before, some variation in heights. Allows us, we would probably build it all as a solid 2-story building then. And we would probably lose, we're very close on the whole feasible factor of it. And right now, we couldn't lose any units.
How, if there are no other 3-story units in the neighborhood, how is a 3-story unit not changing the character of the neighborhood?
Well, there are tall, we haven't gone through and measured the height of some of the 2-story buildings, but I think you'd find that they're quite, some of them are quite tall. And we could do that to check
I really don't care so much about the measurements, but I just heard the fire chief
Difference
say that
between-
there are no
well-
3-story buildings in the neighborhood, so,
Is the
again,
issue the height, is it the height or is it the number of floors? It's probably it's probably a little bit of both, quite honestly.
but if there's nothing like it in the neighborhood, wouldn't it change the character of the neighborhood? Or are you saying, no, it's not going to change the character of the neighborhood because, why?
Because there are other tall buildings as well. But also, if we're looking to create a more village-like character, you're going to, in some cases, we're going to need to have a little more height into them, just to get the densities we need. And you're going to see that in, other villages like Fairport or East Rochester. There's 4 or 5-story buildings in some of those places.
Yeah, but I heard from someone who lives right next door to it who said she doesn't want 3 stories. And that's what I'm wondering about that.
Well, so That it is a decision that we look at, how do we make, varied character in the built environment. And we are trying to balance, some green space and some sustainable, design features with what we need to do to try to make the projects work. And that's kind of where we end up. What we've done is, for this, this property right here, that's a 30-foot tall building, and it's right, 5 feet off the line. So when we take this building, we put an angle in it. We try not to make it so, we get some. So we're trying to make it as good as we can with some green spaces in there.
Are you adverse to having the matter tabled so you can address the concerns that the board have come up tonight?
No.
The board is free to table at its discretion.
Oh, I understand.
I'm not going to say we're adverse to anything. I do want to say that not granting the 3-story proposal sends us back to the drawing board. We don't have a project.
Right.
So we're talking another year or two while maybe we come up with something that does work. So this is the project that we're asking you to consider and grant or not grant as you see fit. We should have probably reached out to the Point Pleasant. What we've done is we sort of followed the town guidelines. When we had our meeting, we sent notices out to everybody who's within 1,000 feet radius of this, which is, the town requires notices, I believe, the law says 500 feet. The town voluntarily does 1,000 feet.
That was for the rezoning. Just for clarification, the notification with 1,000 feet is for a rezone application.
Right.
Technically, the 500 foot is the minimum requirement. The town's policy expanded that to account for 1,000 feet when the property was subject to rezoning through the town board. The notification generally for public hearings for this board and for the planning board is within 200 feet. That's what the town notices and lets people know when there's a public hearing before them in their neighborhood.
We did, in fact, notice 1,000 feet, but we had our pre-meetings before we even brought this to any of the town boards. At that initial, I call private meeting with the public, not town-sponsored, we had 2 volunteer firefighters come and speak. One had some concerns, the other one had no concern. But we did not reach out to the district per se as a legal entity. Quite frankly, no one, I never thought of it, no one suggested that I should do it.
Never thought of it. Sorry.
The chief's comment as to the 23 cars he sought actually goes right to our parking requirement. 23 cars, 39 units, that's about 2/3. It's not 70 units, it's 40 units. 2/3 of that would be 30, so we would have more than enough. It's not like we've got that many cars over here. I think Chief inadvertently spoke, he added all the units together as opposed to just the 40 that are going to be on that side. So I don't think it's going to be as jam-packed with cars as the chief may have felt it would be. But we could obviously redesign. You're going to lose green space if we keep the same number of units. You're going to have to give up green space and other potential amenities for the residents.
I think you're over here, but I think your reason of safety with seniors living on a 3rd floor needs to be the utmost importance. So in tabling things or talking it out or reconsidering whether they're all on 2 stories, and he brings up legitimate concerns about I wouldn't want my mom on the 3rd floor and having him worry about getting her out.
Yeah. That is a legitimate personal concern. The project has been designed to meet all state and local fire codes, and it does. The building will be sprinklered. Of course, it's harder to get people off a 3rd floor as opposed to a 2nd floor. I don't disagree with that.
And then there's seniors, walkers, canes, wheelchairs.
You will have all of that, and it's not the only building in town like that, I
I
guarantee you.
understand, but maybe we should have that discussion with them prior to.
All right. We will close the public hearing with respect to this application, and we will be in recess until 9:10. 4225 and 4250 Culver Road. So it looks like we'll go right down the order of the agenda. So the first item on the agenda for which an applicant is still present is the application relating to 55 Lou Crest Drive, also known as 649 Hellendale Road. This is a type 2 action for seeker purposes. Does anyone wish to make a motion with respect to the application? If not, I will. I would move that we grant the variance request based on the following findings. The code refers to a freight van or truck as being an excluded vehicle in this kind of district. And it doesn't include with that any reference to any size or volume. But later on in section 10, it refers to specific dimensions of all other vehicles exceeding any two of the following dimensions. So as I look at the code, it seems to me that the notion of a freight van or a truck was something that ideologically was offensive to the framers of the ordinance, but when they got down to the nitty-gritty of what it was that made it offensive, it seemed to be in this parameter of body height, body length, and body width. And in that section, they indicated that 2 of 3 compliant would be acceptable as long as only one of those dimensions was not exceeded. In this case, the truck the vehicle that's at issue is consistent with the body width, consistent with the body length, and 8 inches, I think it's 1.3 feet higher than, or 1 foot 3 inches higher than what the height would be. Additionally, I don't think that the parking it per se in the driveway, given the size of the vehicle, is a significant change to the character of the neighborhood, especially given the number of immediate neighbors who indicated that they did not have any issue with it. They didn't feel that it was changing the character of their neighborhood. The alternative that wouldn't require a variance would be to park the truck at an off-site location, and the applicant has testified that he uses it both personally and in his business. Parking it off-site would create a hardship. Since he doesn't have another vehicle, he would have to park it and either walk or provide other transportation from wherever he might be able to park it. When you look at the dimensions that are set forth in that subsection 10, I don't believe that the request is substantial. I don't believe that it will have an adverse effect on the physical or environmental conditions if it's granted. It clearly is a self-created situation, but I don't believe it's to the extent that it would preclude granting of the variance. Does anyone wish to second that?
I'll second it.
Can I make a comment?
Certainly.
Even though this is not a substantial size difference, because it's all lettered up in that, typically I would not agree with this vehicle. Again, I always go back to what I want to park next to my house. However, based on the size, I guess I could bend a little, but the other thing that really is a factor, in my opinion, is the fact that all the neighbors who have signed saying they're okay with it. They keep their house in nice shape, the yard looks good, and it's it's not again, the neighbors are not offended by it. There was one neighbor that actually came here and spoke, lives across the street, and he's not offended by it. But under no circumstances do I want this to be a green light for anybody to park commercial vehicles in their yard. Because if it were to have offended the neighbors, I would have turned it down in a heartbeat.
I think our history shows that we take these applications individually. We've approved some, we've denied many. I think we probably denied more than we've granted, although they've been dealing with different types of things.
And this is actually one of the smaller vehicles that we have looked at.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm going to comment, the code does not allow this, and I don't think there's any confusion when reading the code that the height, width, and length measurements are separate from this particular type of truck. And just because this truck isn't big doesn't mean it's still not prohibited. And just because the neighbors like it doesn't mean it's still not prohibited. And I really have a hard time with popularity, competition, zoning decisions, because if another landowner who has a dog that barks a lot, the neighbors don't like that person, then they can have the same box truck and they won't get it because the neighbors don't like it. I think it's, there's no such thing as a slippery slope, but that could be a slippery slope argument. I don't see any real justification for granting the variance. The only variance I believe we voted for that I can recall for commercial type trucks were when there was a commercial type truck that was used to respond to utility issues in the community. Other than that, we have said no to commercial type trucks, especially trailers that have advertising on them in a residential neighborhood, because people pay residential neighborhood taxes, so they live in a residential neighborhood, not a commercial neighborhood. So with that, I'm going to have to vote against this.
Any other comments from the board?
If we were to approve this, it's for this size vehicle only. So in 2 years from now, if he bids something bigger, he's got to come in front of us again?
For the vehicle that he's requesting, and only that vehicle.
That was going to be my comment. Would the board be inclined to include either the VIN number at some point in the future to what's on file at the town, or do you want to include the dimensions as conditions to the motion that's on the table?
I'm going to add to my motion that it's limited to the vehicle which is the subject of the request.
Is the town also going to place a requirement, the movement rather, that the individual obtain a home occupation permit?
Well, he needs that, yes. You okay with the limitation that it's limited to the vehicle that's subject to the request? And also put the applicant to obtain home occupation permit. Any other comments or questions or discussion from the board?
The only comment I would make is just to the general public, before you invest in a commercial vehicle, look at the code and see what's allowed. Then you don't have to worry about it. I mean, a van could have been purchased that's approximately the same size, and there wouldn't have been any issues.
Good point. Any other questions or comments from the board? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Nay.
Any abstentions? And we have one board member absent. There were 2 nays.
Who's absent?
Brad Upson, our new board member, is absent,
Oh, okay.
so I didn't introduce him. All right, so motion carries 6 in favor. No, I'm sorry, 4. Math was never my strong suit. 4 in favor, 2 opposed, and 1 absent. All right, the next item on our agenda is the application pertaining to 42 Viewcrest Drive. This is also a type 2 action for seeker purposes. Does anyone wish to make an application with respect, or a motion with respect to this application? All right, I'll make a motion that we grant the special use permit, subject to the following conditions. And let me find, that would be that the applicant will arrange for annual inspections of the chickens that are approved, and will submit a certificate can be a letter, proof from a veterinarian that the chickens are in good health and don't create any risk of disease. The coop will be at least 10 feet from any neighboring property lines or fences. The applicant has 7 chickens at present and will be limited to 4 chickens, but can keep the additional 3 as long as they're still present. There's to be an inspection by the town and a report back to our board within 1 year of the granting of the permit with respect to any issues in the neighborhood that could or are alleged to be related to the presence of the chickens, and there's not to be any replacement of the chickens for a 5-year period. With those conditions, I would believe that the concerns that were addressed by those who spoke in opposition to the application, as I mentioned just prior to their speaking, our function is not to decide whether or not chickens should be allowed in residential neighborhoods in the town of Arundecoit. That decision has been made for us by the town board. Our role is limited to determining whether or not at that specific location, under the specific circumstances presented, it is does not pose a negative influence, and what conditions should be imposed in order to ensure that there's a minimal intrusion upon the neighborhood, consistent with the town board's determination that poultry and livestock of this nature are allowed in the residential neighborhoods.
I will second that motion with one question for point of clarification. Was one of the conditions that the barrier be buried at least 24 inches?
Yes, absolutely. When I refer to granting the permit, I'm referring to granting what they put in front of us. So if it didn't have the footing, that wouldn't be what they put in front of us.
They did not, I don't think it had that in there, but they said they'd be willing to do that, so I
No,
would.
it was in their application that they were going to have.
24?
That they were going to have, well, we'll put it into the 24 foot.
24, yeah.
24-inch depth of buried barrier.
Yeah, and that the 7 chickens, we're granting them a variance for 4 chickens.
4, but the 3 tag-alongs,
Correct.
they can stay around as long as they are around.
And I would just, second the motion with those comments. And I would also say, one of the individuals who was here made the comment that chickens belong in a farm. Under Arundecoit law, chickens belong in our backyards. It's just the way the law is, and we're just enforcing it. If you have an issue, that's something to bring up with the town board.
That would require town board action.
I just had a comment to the new homeowners. Again, they need to be very sensitive to the people next door, because they are very concerned, and I don't know if I'll be agreeing with this motion, but they are directly affected, and I do have concerns because they're your new neighbors, and you guys want to stay on the friendly side. So again, that's just a comment.
I guess I would just ask a question for council before we vote on this. If it's found that the applicant or any holder of a special use permit is somehow violating the conditions or anything like that, the permit can be revoked. Is that correct?
Yes, yep.
We did it in the past, same case that resulted in the swearing requirement. Any other questions or comments from the board? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed?
Nay.
And any abstentions?
I did.
Motion carries 5 votes in favor, 1 opposed, no abstentions. We have 1 board member continues to be absent. The next item is the application pertaining to 4225 Culver Road. This is an unlisted action, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
And with respect to this action, I would make a motion that we table the application to give the applicant the opportunity to consult with the fire department that would be serving the premises and determine whether or not it's possible to work out a arrangement that would ensure the safety of those on the third floor if granted, given the chief's comments about having reservations with that effect.
I'll second it.
Is this just for 4250?
Well, it's for 4225 and 4250. Or no, that's just 4250, you're right. My concern, though, is that, as the applicant pointed out, this is all one project, it's all, there's a word that's escaping me now. All
Tied
in the
together.
same mix, tied together. So my motion would be, with respect to both applications, to table them for the present time. And Mr. LaPerry seconded that. Any discussion? All those in favor with respect to both of those applications, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion's carries, 6 votes in favor, no opposed, no abstentions. We have one board member continues to be absent. Next item on our, before us, the packets, everybody should have received drafts of the minutes of the November 7th meeting. Does everybody have an opportunity to review those? Does anybody note any additions or corrections that should be made to the minutes? Seeing none, I'd move that we adopt the minutes of the November 7th meeting as presented. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries, 6 votes in favor, no opposed, no abstentions. One member is absent, although he didn't participate, so. Then we also received the minutes for the Monday, December 5th meeting. Did everyone have an opportunity to review and look over those? And did anyone have any suggestions for any changes or additions to those minutes? Seeing none, I'll move that we adopt the December 5th, 2016 minutes as presented. All those in favor say, oh, there's our second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries, 6 votes in favor, no opposed, no abstentions. One board member remains absent, and we are now adjourned.